but they're fighting to say the N-word because their grandma's half black. Hi, my name is Ava, and today we're going to talk about the appropriation of black culture. So, what is cultural appropriation? Cultural appropriation is when people of a majority group take the minority's culture and use it in a harmful or stereotypical way. A lot of the times people try to pass off cultural appropriation with appreciation, but there's definitely a big difference. Usually appreciation comes from understanding things about that culture and looking into it and just knowing what parts of the culture you can use when you're not actually a part of the culture and what parts are disrespectful to use. I'm sure most people have seen a white woman cultural appropriating. It's something that happens very often, and it seemed to be okay at this point. And they do this in many ways. So there are some people that just over-tan. There are some people who just over-tan to the extreme to where their skin could never tan that much by just going out in the sun. Even when you look at these people, they almost look kind of weird because it's always like the bright blonde hair and super dark skin. And I've seen TikToks before that will play a little game where they try to get you to guess whether it's a black woman or if it's a white woman with a really heavy tan. And most of the time, I'm not good at those games because I really can't tell because their skin is just that dark. I might put a picture up, but still, it's just their skin is tan to the point where it's really unnatural. Another type of appropriation that's really normalized is getting black protective hairstyles. You see this a lot in celebrities that get their hair braided and it's instantly a fresh new look and they've started a new trend, even though black people have been doing this for many years. And it doesn't bother black people just because we're not getting recognition. The problem is that those styles are not meant for their hair. A lot of braided styles are meant for curly hair, and when these people with straight hair get their box braids or they get their cornrows, it usually looks weird on them and it can even damage their hair. The topic of protective styles is usually a debate when it comes to people who are not black because they don't understand why we don't want them wearing those styles and they feel like we're trying to exclude them even though they shouldn't even be a part of that. It's okay to braid your hair if you have it braided like mine, but just in the ways where you're doing your box braids and doing these cultural things, it's not okay because of the way that black people have been treated in the past for having these styles and just where these styles have come from. Because the people appropriating these styles don't understand the cultural significance, and it's really hurtful to see non-black people wearing these styles and being so combative when they're told that they should not wear those hairstyles. A lot of times people argue that they have braids in their culture, but the thing is, they're never doing braids from their culture. People will say, oh, the Vikings did braids, they did this, but their braids are different than African American braids. Back in the slavery days, people would braid their hair in order to show the escape routes to get out of slavery. And there were other uses of braids too, and they would braid food in their hair, such as rice or grains and things like that. And most people don't know these backgrounds, and they don't realize that braids have such a significant cultural background. And along with that background, black women have also been ridiculed for wearing them, especially in the workplace. There have been many times when women have been punished in the workplace for wearing their hair in braids and not wearing it naturally, or even wearing it naturally because that's seen as unkempt and that they should straighten their hair and they should assimilate. Even young girls in school have gotten kicked out for wearing braids. So it's not just hair, because other people have made it more than just hair. The argument is always that it's just hair and that it doesn't matter, so why should we care? But we didn't make it just hair. There have been so many things that have happened to the point where our hair is not just hair. It has such a large... Celebrities also appropriate our culture in a very stereotypical way. You'll often see rap or hip-hop artists that are non-black that try to put on a fake persona so they can seem more hood or seem like the black people that they see on the internet. But that's very harmful because although hip-hop and rap has come from black people, you don't have to be those stereotypes to engage in that kind of content. It's very inauthentic when a non-black rapper gets cornrows or they adopt AAVE just to seem like the black rappers that they have seen before. This happens a lot in American culture, but it also happens a lot in the K-pop scene. There are many K-pop idols that appropriate black culture, and the excuse is often, oh, well, they're not usually around black people, so they don't know it's bad, or they don't understand these things, they thought this was normal. But that's really harmful because you can't infantilize a whole country. These people are adults and they understand who black people are. They're millionaires, they've traveled around the world, they have seen black people before. So they know that these stereotypes are very harmful, but they continue to do it because it's making them money. Even in a smaller sense, people adopt black stereotypes, and you can see this a lot in schools, where girls will adopt the attitude of how they think a black woman would act and how she would talk and how she would look. And this is often when they have their hair in a big high bun, or they'll curl their hair so it looks like they have naturally curly hair, or they'll put on their long acrylics and they'll put on their black scent just so they can seem black. And it's usually people that lie and say that they're part black or that their grandma's black, so it's fine. But it's not fine to act like a stereotype of another race. That's different if you just enjoy how normal black women dress and you want to dress like them, but they take it to the extent that it feels like they're cosplaying us. And you can see this in people like Whoa Vicky or Bad Baby, where they just adopt these stereotypes so much and it's their whole entire personality. These are also usually the same people that fight so hard to say the N-word, which makes no sense to me because that's not even in my vocabulary, and I'm full black, but they're fighting to say the N-word because their grandma's half black. So it just doesn't really make sense. Let's talk about AAVE. So, AAVE stands for African American Vernacular, and it's basically the slang that black people use in America. Most people are pretty familiar with AAVE, but they probably just have never heard that word before. And it's not bad for non-black people to use this kind of slang, but the problem is when they start to use it incorrectly, or they start to use it so much to the point where they're changing their real voice. Because you can use slang and use your real voice, but there's some people where they only talk in slang, they only talk in AVE, and then you catch them off guard and they're back to talking like how they usually do. So that's when it's bad, because that's not your real voice and you're trying to be someone you're not. You're allowed to adopt popular slang, but not to the extent where you seem as though you're a caricature of someone. I've noticed that on TikTok, a lot of AAVE is very popular, and most black people don't understand that it is AAVE, and they just take it as internet slang or TikTok language, and they're wondering why people are still saying it, and they think that it's so cringy. But it only gets that way when the non-black people overuse it or use it in the wrong way, because I've seen so many videos where people are using these words in the wrong way. Even though it's slang, there are grammatical rules for it, or else it just won't make sense. There are many popular phrases today that most people say, like, be for real, and a lot of people on TikTok will wonder, why are people still saying this? And internet language has gotten out of hand because everyone's saying it. But it's not internet slang. It doesn't go across races. It's just black slang, but other people have adopted it. I've even seen videos where people will be like, I can't believe we used to say on fleek back then in 2016. That was so cringy. That was so weird. But it only got weird once everyone started using it, and they started using it in the wrong ways or overusing it, things like that, where the language in itself isn't bad, but it just gets bad once everyone starts overusing it and they decide it's not cool anymore. A lot of Black people know AAVE because that's just what your parents speak or how your friends talk to you. And it's normal because I didn't even know there was a word for it until recently. I just thought, like, that's just the slang, that's just how Black people talk. But it's the people that try to take over these slang words and use them in the wrong way that almost mess things up for us. I guess it taints the culture of these words. So, you are allowed to use slang, but just not to the extent where you sound like you're trying to be someone else. Culture appropriation is so harmful because it's often rooted in oppression. It could be oppressive because the people that appropriate gain all of the good things out of being Black while never facing the bad parts of it. So when these people dress up like us, or they talk like us, or they act like us, they benefit from it because they know that they're going to get popular from other people, or they know they're going to get views from the outrage of Black people, yet they don't have to experience being Black from day to day. They don't have to experience the oppression or the racism that most Black people face, but they can benefit from pretending to be one for a few hours. I'm not sure if all of them realize how bad this is, but I wish more people did, especially with the topic of hair, where non-Black people get their hair braided or put in protective styles. They can just take those out. They don't have to be treated like a Black person if they don't want to. They can take their braids out and immediately all of their privilege comes back. They probably didn't lose very much privilege with those braids in, but they know that once they take them out, they're a normal white person again, or a normal non-Black person. So they don't have to think about those consequences. And the problem with us is that when we have our hair in protective styles and people in the workplace or people at school are telling us that these styles are bad and that they're ghetto and that we should not be allowed to have these hairstyles, we still take them out and we're still oppressed after that, so there's nothing that's changing. It can be disheartening to see other people gaining from stealing Black culture without even experiencing the ways that we are oppressed. A lot of the times I think people assume that it's just not that deep and that everyone steals from time to time, or everyone wants to try something new, and just because the hottest IG model is wearing braids or getting aggressive tans or using AAVE, it's fine because she's doing it. And how bad could that be to pretend to be a Black woman? Or even the people that are comedians that pretend to be a Black stereotype and everyone thinks it's so funny that they do that. It's continuing these stereotypes. Stereotypes will always exist. But when we continue to talk about these stereotypes and give these stereotypes platforms, there's no way that they'll get smaller, no way that people will realize that not all Black people are the same. And I think this ties in to what I said in my last video, that these stereotypes that non-Black people continue to give light can often put Black people in a box. When they're not these stereotypes, they're seen as weird, or they're seen as not Black. But why are we letting non-Black people decide how a Black person is supposed to look? I think privilege, in a way, clouds people's minds and stops them from understanding how marginalized people will be affected by their actions. I don't think that they're thinking on a daily basis when they're appropriating how this will affect the communities that they are appropriating. And this is not to say that Black people can never culturally appropriate, because they can, and I've seen it before, but this is just explaining how popular it is to culturally appropriate Black people and how it is normalized And I hope that we get to the point where these things are no longer normal. Well, that is all I have to say today. And if you've made it to the end of the video, please like and comment and subscribe. And thanks for watching.